Started and start recording. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our January Membership Matters session. This month's topic is with Sora Phillips, our second antibacillus, and she will be talking about 7 habits of highly effective Zetas. Want to do a quick intro of Sora Phillips, maybe some things that you don't know about her. That will be great to know. So Sora Phillips is PMZ made. She became a Zeta in fall of 2012. She is a number 2 that was initiated out of what, 4? 4 or 5, Sora Phillips?
4.
4, okay. She has her doctorate in Christian education and family counseling. She went to high school here in Charlotte, but is a military brat. And interesting facts is she's an ordained minister. Who knew? And she's also former law enforcement. So I will go ahead and let Sora Phillips take it from here.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a book written by Stephen Covey.
Can you talk a little louder? You're low.
Sure. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Does everyone hear Sora Phillips, or does she sound low?
She sounds low.
She sounds a little low, yeah.
Okay.
Where's your mic? That's your camera.
Okay, is that better? Is it still low?
A teeny bit.
Everything is turned.
But just kind of talk louder.
Okay. So the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a book written by Stephen Covey. It is a self-improvement book, and it's written on his beliefs that the way we see the world is entirely based on our own perceptions. So in order to change a given situation, we must change ourselves. And in order to change ourselves, we must be able to change our perceptions. So what habits do highly effective people have? The book pretty much opens with an explanation of how many individuals who have achieved a high degree of success still finds themselves struggling with an inner need for developing personal effectiveness and growing healthy relationships with other people. So the first habit is to be proactive. So when you talk about being proactive is basically stating that we are in charge, and it's merely more than being proactive, as in taking initiative. It is being proactive as it relates to your responsibilities and your responses. It is, as humans, we are responsible for our own lives, and our behavior is a function of our decisions and not our conditions. We have the responsibility to make things happen. So with that being said, when you think about being proactive and being being responsive with your responsibilities and your responses, that's pretty much your what. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? So I got certified in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when I was at the sheriff's office back in 2014, and it changed my life drastically. And when I started really being active in Zeta, I started to apply some of these principles to Zeta to make me a more balanced and well-rounded Zeta. So my number 1 for Zeta, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? That's my what. So that's for 7 habits. 7 habits. Number 1 is to be proactive. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? So number 2 is to begin with the end in mind. When you begin with the end in mind, that's merely your why. Why did you want to become a Zeta? Why is it that you remain active? Why is it that you would like to move up in leadership? Your why should always remain in front of you. So as you discover your why in Zeta, then your what will become more concise. Your what will become more impactful. So as we are approaching elections, and you're thinking about a leadership position, or if you're thinking about wanting to chair, what is your why? So your why, when you discover your why, it kind of makes the fluff of being in an organization, the chatter of being in an organization, just a little less impactful as it relates to you and your decisions. So number 2 is begin with the end in mind. What is your why? So number 3 is a habit of personal management. Put first things first. So when I am involved in Zeta, I think about what is first. The main thing is to keep the thing the main thing. So as challenges arise or as situations arise, you want to kind of think win-win. You want to put the main thing first. You want to put first things first. That is pretty much time management. You want to not pretty much control your time, but you want to control your priorities. For me, it's not spending too much time on social media. It's not spending too much time in Zeta and not enough time with my family. It's being well-rounded in Zeta, putting first thing first, knowing how to prioritize my things, and staying out of having crises and emergencies. That's what putting first things first is all about. So the 4th habit is to think win-win. So of course, being in Zeta, when you are in an organization, and we all have different opinions, your opinion may not be any better than anybody else's opinion, but when we're trying to strategize, you want to think win-win. That is mutual benefit for all of us. How is it that we all can win? If you win and I lose, then technically we all lose. So you want to try to have these conversations or come to these agreements to where it'll work for everyone. So you want to agree to think win-win. That's habit number 4, thinking win-win. So habit number 5 is where we come, where the communication lies. This is where you want to start to have your crucial conversations. And it's to seek first to understand, then to be understood. Once you begin to have crucial conversations with your sister, then I believe that will help to minimize a lot of perceptions or misperceptions about situations. You want to understand. You don't want to listen so you can reply. You want to really listen to your sister so you can really empathize with what she has going on, so you can really understand, try to look at it from her lenses, and instead of just trying to listen to reply. That's where you want to start to have these crucial conversations. I believe that crucial conversations within the organization is very important, because without a conversation, really, there can be no resolution. So that's number 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Number 6 is synergize. When we synergize, that is the habit of creative cooperation. That is when we are all cooperating. We all have the same end in mind. We all have the same goal, and that's to handle the business of Zeta effectively and sisterly. So when you synergize, that's when it's not me, but it's we. What can we do as a team? That's when you start to work as a team, when you synergize. And habit number 7, last but not least, is sharpen. It's called sharpen the saw. And that is the habit of daily self-renewal And with sharpen the saw, that's when you want to make sure you are living a balanced life. You don't have too much Zeta and not enough family. You don't have too much family and not enough Zeta or not enough church. For me, when I sharpen the saw, I have to make sure that I am effective on all levels of my life as it relates to my employment, as it relates to Zeta, as it relates to my family, even as it relates to church. I have to make sure that I am making sure that I am effectively doing the things that I need to do and not spending too much time in one area. I also want to take care of myself. And when you sharpen the saw, you also want to, that is also a time to renew your training and education as it relates to Zeta. You want to go to conferences. You want to brush up on your Robert's rules. You want to come to meetings prepared, reading the, have already read the reports. And that's pretty much what sharpening the saw means. It's kind of like a self-renewal, keeping up with your training and of that nature. And making sure you take care of yourself is most importantly. That's sharpening the saw so you can turn around and do it all over again. Those are the 7 habits of a highly effective Zeta.
All right. I'd like to, at this particular time, we've heard what those 7 habits are. Does anyone struggle with any of these or are good at one of these things? I'm just curious.
It's Lori. I had a question for Renee.
Okay.
Renee, you were saying that you pretty much embraced these 7 habits after you went through the training. How did you do it? Did you tackle one of them at a time? Like, how long did it kind of take you to feel like you really kind of had them all, you know, as part of your foundation? Like, how did that look for you?
Well, with the 7 habits, it's like a 2-week training, so it really does condition your mind. We live in what Stephen Covey calls 4 quadrants, and these 4 quadrants, it tells you, like quadrant number 4, that's when you live in a crisis. That's when an emergency arises. That's when you are not properly pretty much planning and something happens. So you have to really be able to identify what quadrant you are at that particular time. That goes back to number 1, the be proactive. Being proactive is also taking a self-assessment and looking to see for me, I did a SWOT analysis on myself, and I looked to see what my strengths were, what my weaknesses are, what my opportunities were, and what were my threats. And with that being said, after you take your self-assessment, you have to really identify with what are your triggers, what is your behavior, and you have to ask yourself if you do display negative behavior, or if you are acting irrational every time someone calls something to your attention. You have to. To me, that was the hardest one, because I had to really take a deep assessment, and I had to really look at myself and I wrote a lot of things down, and I had to face that self-assessment in order to start to move forward with the rest of the habits.
Thank you, Renee. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I definitely have some things I need to work on.
Any other questions for Renee or examples of one of the 7 habits? Well, don't all volunteer at once. Myself, I can tell you one thing that I struggle with that might be a pro and a con, because I've had conversations where I've seek feedback from source on certain things of where I can improve or any ideas that you've had. And then I've had the opposite, where I've had to have conversations with people because there seems to be, what I would call and Brittany says it too, like a lot of noise in the atmosphere. A lot of times when you're dealing with a large organization, one thing that you say could just turn into 50 words in 2 days. And it's like, that's totally not what I was trying to say, nor where I was trying to get at. And so I know personally on the pro side of things, I did have a conversation with Asura before where I got some feedback that I wasn't too excited about. Like, no one really likes constructive. You should get constructive feedback, but sometimes the way that people deliver it to you, my gosh. But then when I wrote it down and I absorbed it, and I said, you know what, that's actually a value add. I don't think that the soror gave me the feedback out of malice. I think she gave me that feedback because she wanted me to be successful. And when I executed, she actually came up to me and said, hey, Soror, you did a really good job. So that's on the, I guess I'll say on the positive side on it. On the crucial conversation side about it, I went and had a conversation with the soror after a meeting because I felt like she felt uneasy about something that went on during the meeting. And so not a lot of people like to talk when we have our meetings and you're in front of an audience, if you will. And I could tell by her facial expressions, especially since I'm in the front and I could just look back. So I could really tell that the soror felt uncomfortable. And when I pulled her aside after the meeting and kind of explained, this was our reasoning behind it. Where are you confused? And gave her the chain of events behind it, because not everybody, follows to a T, meeting minutes. Not everyone may not be able to come to every meeting. And when I had that conversation with her, I was a little bit apprehensive at first because it was like, okay, if I ask her, why'd you make that face? She may say, none of your business. And I think I came, with a good intent to really understand her. And, we both were able to, kind of come to a medium where she understood where I was coming from during the meeting and where I was trying to get at. So.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's kind of hard for me, I did struggle with going to people to have crucial conversations because I don't like conflict. And I struggle with that. But I do think that if you are going with the right intention and if you are delivering the message in a sisterly type way, I feel like that's the start. Now, whether if they receive it or not, to me, I have to let that part go. I can't worry if they receive it. I just think the responsibility is for me to deliver it, because if someone had not had the crucial conversation with me, I probably would not be where I am today. Are there any other questions?
Renee, it's Lori again. I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment, but I'll direct it to the whole group. How do you, and I am trying to figure out how to word this, how do you make yourself more open and to try to project that you're open to feedback? I don't know. I have found in both work situations, especially, and even in my personal life, just, different organizations that I'm a part of, I feel like, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, I kind of feel like there's something about my personality that people are just not comfortable giving me feedback. And I can't say it's a situation where people have gave me feedback and I reacted, in a, negative fashion, or why are you giving me that feedback? I just feel like people just, for whatever reason, it's just something about, I don't know if it's some kind of aura that I put out to the world, but I just feel like people are just never really comfortable giving me feedback. I mean, does anyone have any kind of insight into that? Or, I know it's kind of a crazy notion.
No, I think, Lori, I feel like sometimes people think that I have that look as well. I've been told that I look mean. I'm not mean.
I'm
But
not mean either.
yeah, I'm not mean. So if you know me, right? But I may have a serious face a lot. Um, and I have tried in some spaces, at least where I feel comfortable saying, hey, like, let me know. Everything okay? Let me know. you know,
Right. And
talk
I
to
do that
me.
a lot too, especially at
Yeah.
work. I do that a lot.
Yeah. And so, just kind of reiterating that if you're having conversations, if you're having meetings, so you have put a disclaimer, that, hey, I know that I talk about this all the time, that you could feel free to come to me if you have any feedback, etc. So if something does happen, they can't say, well, I didn't think I could come to you. It's like, no,
Right.
no.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Todd.
Hello?
Is that Brittany? I heard somebody. Anyone else have any examples?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you.
I'm sorry, it keeps going on to mute by itself. But anyway, I just wanted to share, maybe this is some perspective that could be helpful. Sometimes people are relational. So while you can kind of give the disclaimer, we can give the disclaimer that we're open to feedback. Some people will only give you feedback if they have developed some type of relationship with you. To where they feel they know your personality, or as we say in therapy, they've established a rapport with you. And to the point where that they can feel comfortable providing some type of feedback. Sometimes what I have seen for those people who sort of wanted the feedback but didn't receive it, I guess questioning yourself is if are you building relationships? Are you developing kind of deeper and meaningful relationships with people that kind of sets a platform to give and receive feedback?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point, Brittany.
Because for me, well, obviously it's a little different in my role within Zeta, but even still, I'm really intentional about developing some level of rapport or relationship with just about everybody in the chapter, because there may, because of my role, be an opportunity for me to receive feedback, and there may be opportunities for me to provide feedback. And feedback is better received when you understand people's intentions, when you understand who they are, and when they understand who you are. And within Zeta, knowing your source heart, it just kind of makes it a lot easier to give that. So I would say check in with how you're relating to people around you, and how they're connecting with you, because I think that's a piece.
That's very good. That was very good. I like that, Madam Basilis. I have a question that actually derived from your comment. Do you think, for me, I know for me, relationship matters for me. Does everyone feel the same way? Does relationship matter to them as far as, I know I hear sometimes where people may say, well, I'm just here to do business. But for me, I feel like relationship matters, not just everything business, but I think relationship matters.
I mean, if I could respond to
Please.
that, this is Brittany. Relationships do matter. And I think that with us being women, I mean, that's evidence based, that's how we're just socially constructed. That's how we're wired, that we're relational beings.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's how we are meant to be. Now, there are some who I think people feel like, for whatever reason, focus more heavily on the business And there are others who focus more heavily on the relationship side. But it goes back to what you said, having that balance, having the balance, and being able to be reasonable on both the business side and our relationships as we grow within the organization.
That's good feedback. At what point is there ever a time that you stop giving ear to a sister? At what point, like let's say you may encounter someone that does just not there yet, or just let's say, I'm just gonna say hypothetically speaking, maybe just doesn't have a filter. So at what point would you stop lending your ear to them, or would you still try to create some type of relationship in hopes that you can make an influence?
This is Okeme. Can I speak on that?
Sure.
In my personal and professional experience, you will get walls sometimes from people. You can make sure your intent is correct, your posture can be right, your tone can be right. I think a lot of it sometimes for me, I realize depends on how people were raised, how they handle conflict in their personal lives. And I say that because my husband and I both come from two different types of family types. His family are all intimate and, they're cool and they're quiet and they don't really talk about the tough stuff, where my family talks about the tough stuff and we're loud. And so we're completely different on how we handle things. And we talk about this kind of stuff, just how you relate to other people is based on your upbringing. So even though you might have all the knowledge, all the right intentions, your heart's in the right place, if that person's not used to your style of communication, then sometimes almost like your efforts kind of seem like they fall on deaf ear. But I choose to continue to extend that grace, as well as continue to love on that person, and hopefully in time they will feel like they can come to me, or we can have those type of conversations. But I know most times people don't, again, like you said, people don't like rejection. I don't like rejection either. But I realize I have to keep coming back. Obviously, if you never solve a situation, it's never going to go away. It's going to keep resurfacing, maybe in a different manner, but it's the same challenge. So I just try to keep that in the back of my mind, that I have to continue to be that person, or the bigger person, or the person that's going to continue to extend grace to them, and hopeful that over time that those concerns, if it come back up again, the person will be more receptive to me. But it is built on relationships. You do have to continue to be intentional about building relational people so they can feel comfortable coming to you for something like that. Or when it's things you don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about. If you, over time, if you build relationships with them, I do think it can get easy.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. I like that.
You being an educator right now, you can probably relate, because it's the same thing with parents and of students. Yeah. You can tell in the first quarter something, they looking with your arms all folded, and then if you continue to see them and say hello to them, maybe when the next time you have a conversation, they'll be more receptive to some things that you might have said earlier, but initially, because they don't know you like that, they're just hearing you, but they're not feeling what you're saying. So it's just kind of, it is a process.
It is a process. It is a process. It is, but I like that word that you used when you said that you continue to extend grace. And I like that, because there are times when I need grace from other people, or, because I'm not perfect as well. Even as I think you would have to, reading the 7 Habits, that book it cannot touch the actual training. And I don't know, before I started applying these 7 habits, I was a totally different person. And I don't know if being in uniform had anything to do with it, which I don't think so, but I just think it was the way I responded. And I think, like for me, I would respond out of my condition, instead of, there's a thin line between what happens and your response. Like that little space in between can really make a difference. And I actually learned that in training. And when I started to apply these concepts, it really, really helped me out a lot. Like I used to be a yeller. I don't yell anymore. Like I'm that seek first to understand. I really want to understand where you were coming from, like what space, because that's your reality. You understand what I'm saying? So I try to understand the behavior. I try, even though we choose that behavior, I try to understand that behavior and that response before I start to give my perception on, the situation. So I really like that word, Grace, you use. That's awesome.
All right, Soros. Well, we have 5 minutes left, and then we'll be cut off here for Zumbi. Any other questions or comments for Sora Phillips, or anything on your mind?
I just want to say, this is Sora Clark, I'm sorry, to Renee, how I thought this was a great workshop or embellishment. I also like the fact that you were able to, I appreciate the fact that you're able to kind of model that accountability and ownership, that you took the time out to attend a training, to read a book. I have that book as well, and I read it. But a big part of being a good Zeta is not just knowing the bylaws, the governing documents, the handbook. It's about stepping outside and kind of nurturing ourselves and doing our own self-assessments and our personal development and our personal growth, because it's going to tie in every aspect of our lives. And I think it's so important for Soros to understand. I don't just throw out therapy. I would say therapy can be personal growth, can just be going to reflect on who you are, your goals, areas where you want to challenge yourself. And I think it's great that you're just doing that extra work and bringing that back to the sisterhood, and hopefully promoting that so that other Soros will feel empowered to kind of step out and learn a little bit more about themselves as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other question, comments? Okay. Well, Soros, thank you so much for dialing in this evening. We look forward to having your participation next month. It would be great. We'll have Sora Carr and Sora Young talking about budget and finance within PMZ. So until then, see you later.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome job, Renee.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Good night.
Good night, Soros.
Good night, ladies.